everyone! So today, we're going to learn about Archimedes Principle. Now, to understand more about this topic, we are going to conduct a short experiment using X to show how the Archimedes Principle actually works. But wait, what is Archimedes Principle? Well, Archimedes' principle is the principle that states that the upward buoyant force that is exerted on a body immersed in a fluid, whether fully or partially submerged, is equal to the weight of the fluid that the body displaces and acts in the upward direction at the center of the mass of displaced fluid. Archimedes' principle is a law of physics fundamental to fluid mechanics. It was formulated by Archimedes of Syracuse. In the second case of Archimedes' principle, there are three types. First is sinking, barely floating, and last, floating. To conduct this experiment, there will be a few things we will need. First are 3 plastic cups, plenty of salt, 3 raw eggs, a fork or a stirrer. Now here is how the experiment is done. First, fill the cup with water. However, make sure not to put too much water. Do this to every cup. Second, put the eggs in the cup. Since all the eggs are already sinking, we want to put 1 cup away. Now, we want to make this particular egg barely floating, so let's put the other one aside and focus on this egg. Now, add generous amounts of salt. However, make sure not to put too much salt or else the egg will be floating instead of barely floating. Afterwards, mix everything together and you will get an egg which is barely floating. Moving on to the other egg, this time we want to make the egg floating. So, again, add lots of salt. This time, you really want to put generous amounts of salt. Again, mix everything together, and this will result in an egg which is floating. Now, this is the final result of the sinking, barely floating, and floating egg. However, some of us might be wondering how the salt contributes in making the eggs float and barely float. And why does the egg directly sink without the existence of salt? Well, the egg sinks because the egg itself is already heavier than the water. Therefore, we don't need salt. While for barely floating and floating egg, we need salt to make the eggs float since the salt increases the density of the water, which makes the buoyancy stronger, which then makes the egg feel lighter, causing it to float. Well, that is all about Archimedes' Principle. We truly hope that you understand more about this topic from this video.